Going live in a moment. Hello. Hi everybody. Hello, I'm Polly Leonard. I'm the founder and editor of Selvedge magazine. Welcome this afternoon to the 6th in our series of Textile Talks. My cup of tea. We stop work early on Fridays and we talk with someone we have featured in the magazine. And today I have the privilege of talking to Frances van Hasselt. Frances is the founder of Frances VH Mohair rugs and is joining me today from the home of Mohair in South Africa. Hello Frances, thank you for joining us.
Hi Polly, I hope my connection is good.
It's great, I can hear you beautifully. Okay. We featured Frances's rugs in issue 99, Selvedge, the home issue. You can read all about her rugs there. We are also putting together a capsule collection for our website. So in a day or so, you'll be able to see those on our website. So first things first, Frances, can we clarify that mohair is the hair of the Angora goat, not to be confused with Angora wool, which is the fibre produced by the Angora rabbit. Frances, Can you describe mohair fibre for us? What is so wonderful about it?
So I'm really glad you mentioned that, because mohair comes from an Angora goat, and the only similarity it has to an Angora rabbit is that they both originated from a certain area in Turkey called Angora, which is now called Angora, but otherwise they're totally different. So I don't know if anyone can see, but I have like a little yes, sample of what Angora mohair looks like. And what is so fabulous about this fiber is that it has the most incredible qualities that no other natural fiber has. So one of the main reasons why it's used is that it has wonderful natural luster, which gives incredible sheen and quality to garments. And also it holds dye exceptionally well. So people think that with natural fibers, you should try and keep it natural coloring. But with mohair, one of its defining features is that it makes color come alive because of this luster and its ability to absorb it. It's non-flammable, it's not creaseable, it's incredibly durable, which is fabulous, and it's odorless, it holds moisture. That's why they put mohair in mohair socks, because it doesn't hold any kind of smell. And another interesting part is that it has an incredible sound barrier. So lots of theatres would use mohair curtaining for their theatre curtains or for sound rooms to block out sound. And then for me personally, what makes this fiber so special is that almost all of the world's mohair is produced in South Africa and in a very unique ecosystem called the Karoo, which is a semi-arid region. So it has this incredible South African heritage, and it's a very special, ancient, sustainable natural fiber, which comes predominantly from South Africa. So I hope I answer that.
Thank you very much. So if I wanted to become a mohair farmer, how would I make sure my goats produce the very best fiber?
Well, luckily I grew up on a mohair farm, so I'm used to this question, and my family are so passionate about it. And Angora mohair is probably the most similar to human hair. And if you think of an animal in the same way that you think of humans, it makes sense. So the healthier the animal, the happier, the more stress-free, you're going to produce the most amazing mohair. And so to give more practical examples, their diet is really important, to have a balanced diet and to feed off a natural environment that is suited to their digestive system. And they always need to have water. They always need to be you know, washed so that their fleeces are clean. And then Angora goats are exceptionally susceptible to stress. So you want to constantly make sure that they're in the most relaxed environment without any stress. And then the biggest part of that, besides their natural environment, is the human interaction with animals.
Yeah.
And for us, the shepherds play such a vital role in the well-being of our animals, and they have such a close affinity to nature and to the animals, and they have a natural capacity to kind of read animal language. So goats, for example, every goat has a unique bleat. It's almost like their fingerprint. So when a mother is calling to their kid, they recognize that bleat. It's unique to them. So the herdsmen know the difference between a bleat calling for a companion, a kid looking for their mother, or a sign of distress. So it's a really, I hope that, but the environment, the climate, water, what they eat, and then obviously stress-free and living long, healthy lives is how you get the best mohair. And I think it's important to stress the fact that the main reason why mohair is so sustainable is because it doesn't only make ecologic and ethical sense to produce this way, it's the best economic way to grow mohair, because the better you look after your animal, the better the quality of their hair, the longer they live, the more. So it's a beautiful symbiotic relationship.
I think that's very interesting that you say that the shepherds can read the bleats of the goat. It's like a new mother knows the cry of her baby, whether the baby's hungry or just needs a hug.
Yes.
And I think, you know, if you're stressed yourself, it affects your hair. So I think that's very interesting. Can you tell me, Frances, are your goats shorn like sheep, or is the hair removed by combing as it is in cashmere with cashmere fibre?
So goats are shorn like sheep, and they're shorn twice a year. And it's a really important part of animal husbandry. So they're shorn in the summer season and then the winter season. And in the summer, it's really important because it is exceptionally hot in the Karoo. And they've got this long, curly hair. For them just to be free of it in terms of movement and just general, I'm going to sound ridiculous, but skincare and hygiene, it's so much better for them. And then the vegetation that they love to feed on is very thorny bushes, and it's called acacia trees. And they love to climb and get to these kind of roots. And often their hair gets stuck in them. So it's just a really good way for them to move and to be more comfortable. And then in the winter season, this is generally just before kidding season. So when the mothers give birth. And it's really important so that they don't have long hair, which in any way hinders the birthing process. And also for the little kids to suckle on their mother and to it's easy. And then a really interesting point that my brother mentioned to me, which I didn't know, is that when the little goats are born, obviously they don't have long hair. And so for the mothers to be able to look after their offspring better, if they are hot and full of hair, they have no perception as to the weather implicating their kids. So they're much better mothers and nurturers for their children when they have the same condition. And but obviously there are cold spells and things, but when this happens, farmers move them into sheltered areas and they're protected in that way.
Wonderful, thank you very much. So this brings us nicely to the Karoo. Can you describe the landscape and the climate of the area and why it's so well suited to the goats?
I'll try. It's very simple, but it's so intricate in its vastness. So as I mentioned, the Karoo is this very ancient semi-arid region in South Africa. And if you look at images, it used to be the bottom of the ocean floor. So it's almost like layers of fossilized ocean. If water was stripped of the seabed, that's kind of what it looks like. So it's got these vast, amazing open plains and raw textured rock formations, and then really intricate, tiny, the plant life almost looks like fossilized coral. It's so interesting and ancient and bizarre, and exceptionally hot in the summer and cold in the winter, but it's not, there's no snow, there's not really much snow. It's just, it's a cold winter. And Angora goats just seem to thrive in this really extreme climate. I think it's very similar to the climate that they originated from in Turkey. And also their diet is so well suited to the vegetation in this area. Because it's so desert-like, the nutrients in the plants that survive is so packed with goodness that it just so happens that it's the best kind of palatable food for Angora goats.
Wonderful. So I'm intrigued by this landscape, which not only makes the fibre for your rugs, but is also reflected in the design. Can you tell me a little bit about how you develop the abstract designs that beautifully reflect that really rugged landscape on which the goats graze?
I think they're mainly abstract because I can't replicate what nature does so effortlessly. Really, all the textiles we create, from our rugs to blankets and knitwear, it all stems from the architecture, really simple block stone architecture, the rock formations, the delicate patterning of the floor, like the flora. It's just, when you think of a desert, it's so vast and so simple, but then so layered in intricacies. So when I do abstracted work, ultimately it's just me trying to interpret what I see when I walk and experience the Karoo, because the hardest thing and the most valuable lesson I think that we get taught from living in this kind of environment is that of simplicity. And I think it's one of the best teachers, and it's the hardest thing to achieve, is that kind of, to be comfortable with the simplicity of it. But in terms of the abstract nature of our work, it's just the best way for me to fit what I see into the way that we weave and the way that we work. But it's in no way, in any way, as good as the real thing. So if anyone comes to the Karoo, they'll see that.
We must all visit. Well, I love the designs, and I think their simplicity makes them work very well in many different kinds of interiors. So, on the edge of the Karoo, where you live, the little town, Prince Albert, is on the east, on the southern edge of the Karoo. So it's between Cape Town and Port Elizabeth in the Western Cape. For our listeners who want to just place you geographically, it's about 100 miles inland from Plattenberg Bay. Now, the readers of the magazine might have heard of Plattenberg Bay because that's the home of our friends at the Mungo Weaving Mill. I don't know if you know them, but we featured them a lot in the magazine. So sadly, Frances, Mohair doesn't really enjoy the same position in the public consciousness as, say, cashmere or alpaca. Why do you think this is, and what do you think can be done to cement that link between the fibre and the geography?
So that's a really good point, because people ask that all the time. And it's important to note that mohair is exceptionally small niche industry, whereas wool, cashmere, alpaca, silk is much bigger, so it's more well known, and also it's got a much bigger marketing budget. So you're experiencing those kind of products much more. And then I think in the 80s, mohair was not well used in that it developed a terrible name for being scratchy. And that really is because people were using mohair incorrectly. So they were using adult mohair, which has in technical terms, a higher micron. It should never be used on skin. It's perfect for rugs, for example. But it was used for garments that touch skin. And with that, it got this reputation of being fluffy and scratchy, which is in no way what it is. So it's important to know that with each shearing, the fiber actually changes completely. So it can be used completely differently. So kid mohair, young goat mohair, which is super fine and soft, that forms like the most beautiful textiles, which feels like a combination of cashmere and wool. And then as they get older, it becomes coarser and it's used for different things. So it's taken decades to move people's perception out of that. And then, Polly, I think what is really, and it's one of the main reasons why I do what I do, is that South Africa produces the most mohair in the world. And then all mohair from the rest of the world, from Texas, from Australia, from New Zealand, wherever, gets processed in South Africa. So almost all the world's mohair gets processed here, but then it leaves in a very raw form, which is called a top. I have some here for you. So this is a top.
So like a roving.
Exactly, a roving.
It's
just, exactly. So that's before it's gone into a yarn or anything. So it's incredibly hard because it's so geographically placed in South Africa. It then goes out into the world and we have no control of what it becomes, who uses it. And you can't rely on brands so if there's a big fast fashion brand, for example, and they wanted to do, and they put in 10% adult mohair and 90% acrylic. Yeah. And then they sell that to the public as a mohair jumper. You can't control. And then on the other side, you have the luxury brands who use mohair for all the qualities we talk about, for its luster, for its shine, for its ability to hold color. But even a luxury brand doesn't have the time or the marketing budget to explain every single fiber that they put in their collection. They're marketing their collection. So there's a big disconnect between where the fiber comes from and what it goes into. And then people who actually are wearing mohair have no idea that they're even wearing it. So for us, it's so important to be producing something locally where we can talk about the amazing qualities, the processes, but actually have a product which reflects exactly what mohair should be. So my dream is for South Africa to become a place which not only produces the best mohair, but has the entire supply chain and is home to excellent product, because that's when you start controlling the narrative and people have a better understanding of what it is.
Absolutely. I think to be able to do your own storytelling is the thing that will capture the imagination of the rest of the world. I know you studied PPE. Has this given you, do you think, a wider world view when looking at the position mohair occupies in the South African culture, say in comparison to when you were growing up?
I study PPE and it gives you a really great worldview of how things fit together. But I think for me, I'm very lucky and privileged to have decided that this is something that I'm passionate about and wanting to pursue, and having a family who are so dedicated to farming sustainably. So for me, I grew up in this tiny little town and on a mohair farm, and the only thing I wanted to do was escape into the screens of movies and fashion. And I would my dad would always say to me, well, if you're so interested in clothing, come, let me show you where it starts. And he would take me out into, we call it the felt, but it's the environment, and explain the importance of rainfall. And if there's no rainfall, how the plant life doesn't survive, and how we're dependent on the animals and the shepherds. And so, I mean, at the time, I just thought, you know, poor delusional man, you have no idea. But then, having studied PPE and working in fashion, both in Hong Kong and in South Africa, having an understanding of the system, and then recognizing the incredible gift that we have right here, and ultimately knowing the place where mohair comes from. I understand the animals, I know the herdsmen and the spinners, the processing, the weavers. It gives you probably the best worldview in a tiny mohair world of what's going on.
Thank you. And you employ a small group of local artisans who weave your rugs. What skills do they bring to the process, and how do you make sure that the hand of the maker is evident in the finished rugs? I'm particularly interested in how the fibre is spun and how it's woven.
So I can't do what I do without the most phenomenal artisans I have ever had the privilege of meeting. So I work with traditional women weavers and spinners across the country, mainly in rural traditional areas where there is very little access to the job market or to a market to sell their goods. But what they have is incredible hand skills and this total understanding of the product. And so when you ask how their handwork is seen in the product, it is so every single thread from the start to the finish point goes through someone's hands. So with this mohair, for example, it's opened by hand. Every thread is opened by hand, and then it gets spun. And according to the spinner of the time, how she spins, what her mood is, she might be spinning fast, she might be spinning slowly. You have inconsistencies in that yarn, which we love. And then when you dye that yarn, obviously because it's not uniform, the dye picks up certain movements, which is so special for us. So from the spinner to the dyer, you have their kind of touch. And then the weavers, I mean, I try and design simple things, but at the same time, there's always an element of interpretation, and every single piece that we make is completely unique to who puts it together. And I think it's really, you can see it, you can feel it. It's incredibly raw from the actual fiber, and then from the hands that make it. And I think that in a time now when we're living so much through our screens and technology, there's a definite pull towards having pieces in your home or on your skin that is connected to the earth, is connected to animals, and has a soul of the maker, which is something that technology and mass-produced pieces could never replicate. So I think when you feel, and I try and show it in the imagery, but it's never as successful as the real thing, that it's just a feeling. You just see it. It's raw and it's got soul, and yeah, we hope it reflects in the pieces.
I from my point of view, I think it's hand spinning that's the thing. The nature of a hand spun yarn is almost like a signature. And I think that's what makes your rugs one of the ingredients that makes them so special. Can I ask how you ensure your rugs are environmentally sustainable? Can you tell me a little bit about the dyeing process?
Well, to go back to the fact that environmentally sustainable means where it starts.
Yes.
So it's really important for me, and I want to stress it again, that to farm mohair, it's economically sustainably farmed. So the environment, and when you're living in a desert scape, there's no other way to produce or to farm than to make sure that the land is nurtured for any form of longevity or lastingness. So the very nature of the fiber is sustainable because the goats are farmed for their hair. So that is really important for me to say that, and I love that about it. And then I know every single step of the process. So I know the farm that the mohair comes from, I know the herdsman, we know everyone. But you're asking specifically about dyeing, and one of mohair's best qualities is that it absorbs dye beautifully. So when we dye, the water that comes off is completely clear. There's no element of dye left in that water. And then we've done studies to show that the pH of the water that it's dyed in changes, but when we put that back into our soil, it neutralizes the soil. So it actually benefits, everything grows better. You can see where it's so great, but it's really important. I'm glad you asked that question because the dyeing aspect is really important and so vital that it is environmentally friendly.
Well, that's you have almost the classic example of the transparent supply chain that is on your doorstep. What could be better than that?
Yeah, we are really lucky.
I know you have produced a knitwear range working collaboratively with Lendi Mulder. Can you tell me a little bit about that process of working with someone else?
So Leandi is a phenomenal South African designer and a really good friend of mine. And we both really wanted to work with mohair because it's such a South African fiber and nothing was really being done locally. Because in the 60s, when our borders opened, imports flooded the market and the textile industry largely shut. And not much development has happened. And then, like I said, 80% of the mohair leaves this country. So for us to get excited about mohair, we did a residency in Japan under the most phenomenal yarn expert called Misaki Sato. And for the first time, both of us just absolutely fell in love with mohair and what it could be and how it could be used. And so our knitwear collection was us coming back, having learnt what we had in Japan, obviously not able to replicate that because they are masters at what they do.
They are.
But taking the knowledge of what mohair could be, it was just like this, we were so excited and enthralled about what could be created. And then once again, hand spun yarn, super thin, super fine mohair, and then hand knitted. And the main point of this collection, and we're launching a new blanket range at the end of April, is, like you said, focused on yarns and the art, like the artisans that make it. So when you wear these pieces, you can't be removed from their tassels. It's deconstructed. It's all different shapes and different shades and textures, because so often we wear pieces where there's such a disconnect from the fabric, we don't even think about it. But when you put on these knitwear pieces, you feel like you're wearing threads, like you're wearing yarn. And it's so, yarn making is an art form in itself. So ultimately, the knitwear collection was to show the importance of yarn as an art form, and that it can be done. We can produce a high-end luxury knitwear collection in the South African environment.
They're divinely beautiful. I love your images. They all look fantastic. I have learned so much this afternoon. Thank you very much, Frances. My last question is, how do I look after my mohair rug?
Well, you should look after it, but everyone always says, can I put it on the floor? Can I walk on it? Yes, please. They're rugs. They're so soft underfoot, but they're durable. And if you look after them, they will become heritage pieces that will just be passed on to the next and next generation. So take off your shoes and like sink your feet into the textures. Luckily, mohair doesn't show dirt very easily, and it cleans very well. So if you do spill on it, just use woolite and a damp cloth and just dab on the affected area. Don't use steam. Don't take it to the tumble dryers, or don't do that. Just use a damp cloth on the affected area. Leave it, sunlight is its best friend. Leave it to dry in the sun. And then the way that we weave, our rugs are completely reversible. So just often flick them around and it will just prolong its longevity, and it's good for the rug, but you should be fine. They're there to be used and to enjoy. Just don't walk around the rug.
Thank you so much, Frances. Thank you very much. As I said, we are putting together a capsule collection of Frances's rugs, so you can have a look at those on our website. If I have whet your appetite for all things South African, we did a special South African issue number 83. If you still don't have enough, why not join us for our next event, which is about African wax print. It's on the evening of Wednesday, the 7th of April, when we'll be joined by anthropologist Anne Gosfeli, designer Simone Pope, entrepreneur Adika Parker, and artist Bisa Butler, who will each tell us about the chapter in the story of wax print that they have added with their own work. The presentations that evening will be followed by a screening of the film Wax Print, One Fabric, Four Continents, 200 Years of History. Tickets are available on the Selvedge website. Thank you once again for joining Frances and myself this afternoon. Our next IG Live, our next Talking Textiles, will be on Friday the 9th of April at 3 p.m. GMT, when I will be joined by Wafa Guam, who will be talking about all things Palestinian embroidery. Thank you so much, Frances, and have a lovely weekend. It's been a pleasure.
Bye.
Bye-bye.